Good afternoon and a warm welcome to all of you from etbrandequity.com. This is Prasad Sangameshwaran. I'm the editor at etbrandequity.com. Um, and this is, a part two of this 11-part series that etbrandequity.com is presenting along with C5. Um, the topic for today, um, as all of you know, Z5 is India's number one contact brand, and uh, we've got a very interesting speaker today in the form of Taranjeet Singh to talk about staying relevant in difficult times. Um, a small introduction of Taranjeet Singh, our key speaker today. He is the Chief Revenue Officer and Business Head at Z5 India. Taranjeet is a senior media professional. He's got around 23 years of experience across strategy, revenue management, people relations, data analytics, forecasting, general management skills, leadership skills. He holds a management degree from the Amity Business School. In the past, Taranjit was leading the Twitter India team where he drove an integrated business strategy and spearheaded cross-functional collaboration to accelerate Twitter's audience and revenue growth in this key market. He's also been the sales director South Asia for BBC Advertising and was responsible for the commercial operations of BBC News. Prior to BBC, he's worked at Outlook Publishing. So to sum it up, he has a rich experience across print, TV, digital, and he's got an in-depth knowledge about the media and entertainment industry. In his current role, Taranjit is driving the advertising revenue for Z5. His role involves managing relationships with all key advertisers and agencies across the country. He's focusing on leveraging the Z5 strength in content, consumer, data, and technology to better the advertisers' ROI and therefore establish strong partnerships with them. He's also working towards building the ad tech and ad innovation roadmap for Z5. Additionally, Taranjeet is the business head for the news vertical, where he is responsible for the overall strategy, content planning, operations, marketing, and monetization of the news vertical on Z5. Over to you, Taranjeet.
Thank you so much, Prasad, for the introduction. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining in this afternoon. It's really nice to speak with everyone. So today, in my presentation, there are basically three parts. I'm gonna share with you the shift we are seeing in the consumer side on the media consumption because of the COVID situation. The second part focuses on what we at Z5 are doing, and the third part is how we are helping brands actually reach out to audiences in these times. So like Prasad mentioned, I'm going to run through my presentation for about 40-45 minutes, and post that, happy to answer any questions which you may have. Uh, so just moving on, talking about the digital landscape today as the way we see it, and especially these are very testing and trying times. There has been a major shift in terms of consumer behavior and habit, thanks to the current social situation of a lockdown. So looking at how the overall digital ecosystem has evolved over the last 18-20 months, I think this is not a surprise to anyone that India today is one of the fastest growing cell phone penetrated smartphone markets in the world. We are also the largest data consuming market in the world. I think just to give you a perspective, India, an average Indian used to consume about 500 MB of data into till about 2016. Now we consume over 10 GB a month. So that's you can calculate the math yourself in terms of the percentile growth in people now spending time consuming content over data, and many other functionalities on their smartphones or devices. The on the map, if you see the map, the states which are highlighted yellow are the states actually with the fastest internet growth across the last 4 years, and also the highest penetration so far. And what we're also really starting to see is a shift in the digital and the overall advertising adex in this country. And digital advertising continues to grow at about 26%. What we're seeing very interesting post the COVID period that this share might have a quantum jump going forward. Looking at continuing on the India story, if you look at it, there are the massive opportunity which India holds for internet is like there are 1.2 billion people today who've been uniquely identified through the Aadhaar scheme, and that I think is a massive exercise which was undertaken by any country, no other country in this world, where today all of us have a digital footprint and all of us have been recorded through the country. 560 million internet subscriptions on the mobile. I think India continues to add about 10 million new handsets every month till the corona period happened. I'm pretty sure this momentum and trend will continue to grow. On an average, if you look at it across the entire mobile ecosystem, there are almost 3 to 4 new handsets which get launched every month. There are over 350 million smartphone users, and this continues to grow. Like the number I was sharing with you earlier, about 10 million new smartphones getting added every month. 0.1% cost per GB. We are the cheapest data country in the world in terms of packages, and that's why, hence, also the largest data consuming market. And on an average, Indians spend about 17 hours a week on social media. So that's a fairly high time spent across many social platforms. And that's how the shift on the overall ecosystem, which we are seeing, and which is also affecting the consumer behavior in the country. Looking at the last 5 years, in terms of we are today the second largest population on internet, on mobile across the world. We are going to be closing to about 650 million users who are going to be accessing internet on their mobile phones or other devices, tablets or desktops, and 520 million is the expected number to be at the end of 2020 of people consuming internet on their smartphones. What is really interesting to see is that 40% of consumers in India today prefer content in regional languages. So while the tier one markets grew a massive amount of internet penetration across the country over the last 4 years, what is interesting to see is the emergence of tier two, tier three towns across the country. 66% of audiences do consume content in languages, but 40% consume primarily on their first language and their native language. So that's a massive shift which we are seeing in terms of how people are consuming content across digital devices. What is also really interesting to see is how millennials are driving growth in the country. We all know India is a fairly young country. 50% of our population is below the age of 25. 60% is below the age of 30. And if you look at the overall consumption habits across age groups, millennials and Gen Zs are the ones who are the early adopters on internet, and especially in the Gen Z category, they actually consume more content on their smart devices rather than traditional media. If you look at the time spent across the mediums, there has been a massive rise, almost double when it comes to spending, consuming content on digital devices versus any other medium in this country. What people are consuming is really interesting to also see. So if you look at the chart on the left, it talks about the top countries by App Store download, and if you look at it, UK, China, India, US, Brazil, Indonesia, which are the fairly evolved telecom markets, India actually is the country which is driving almost triple digit growth when it comes to app downloads. And what are people consuming? If you look on the right, it's basically entertainment followed by communication, social media, commerce, e-commerce, and then online shopping. So there's a huge plethora of genres which people are engaging on their smartphones today. And on an average, you would be surprised to know that an average Indian has almost 40 apps on their phone. And that's the kind of engagement today the app world is bringing in our country. Secondly, if you look at it, 72% of Indians prefer video on demand versus cable TV, and this growth has massively happened over the last 12-month period. Today, if you look at it, thanks to Jio's penetration across the rural markets, across the smaller markets with their feature phone enabled with 4G features on KaiOS, is driving that second level, second tier to tier 3 level growth for it. Smart TVs has registered almost a 38% growth over the last year, and 164% in online channels between January and April of this year. What we're seeing is that thanks to obviously the brands like Xiaomi and OnePlus now coming in with very competitively priced entry points for smart television. The growth of the television segment is mainly being driven by smart television in this country. Now, how do we see the media consumption habits, especially in the last 15, the 6 weeks period where we've been in a lockdown, and what the impact has COVID has had on media consumption? So, traditionally, if you look at it, this is how our days used to be before the lockdown. I mean, we all, had a schedule where we would travel to work, have enough time in the afternoon, do a certain schedule in the evening, and then obviously at home at night. Now, if you look at it with lockdown, all this is gone. We are all at home. We are all busy working. We are all busy engaging with content or media which we prefer. But more importantly, this also is giving us enough time to now, have choose content on demand through our digital mediums and really engage with them. And this is a massive change which we are seeing. Uh, this is the reality today. There are no mass gatherings. Schools and colleges are working online. There are classes being delivered through digital mediums. There are no recreational centers. There is no travel time. There is, all sporting events across the world have been cancelled or pushed. Olympics being one. There's no IPL this year. And the biggest hit which has happened in the entertainment industry is that the production of any new content is now on hold. So there's a fair amount of limited access to movement. There's a limited mediums of entertainment, and in-house entertainment options are massively on the rise, which is also driving a lot of digital consumption across this country. Now, how does it affect the various four mediums which we have across the country? Obviously, on television, we are seeing that because of having no new episodes which are coming on a daily basis, there is an increase what we are seeing on the news consumption side. Obviously, there's a massive amount of interest which is on the news genre with the current environment. But news has gathered a more amount of traction than any other entertainment currently on television. Restrictions on newspapers have resulted in lower circulations and readership. Out of home is kind of become irrelevant because there's hardly any traffic or movement across on the roads. What consumers today are spending is more and more time on their smart tablets, devices, smart TVs, computers, and that's where the viewership surge is happening across this country. Uh, how people have started to now, and these are trends which we are also seeing on our platforms, which I'll share in some later slides, is that today there is an increase in entertainment options across the in the house. So watching content on demand across various OTT platforms is now becoming a new norm. There is a massive amount of digital entertainment rise which has happened, and if you look at the latest reports, uh, all platforms, all OTT platforms across the country have shown growth, massive amount of growth, both in terms of subscribers, new subscribers coming on, and also new audiences coming on to the platform. Secondly, there has been a spike in video conferencing. We all know that. I think all of us have become really comfortable with doing videos across Zoom and Skype and Microsoft Teams and other things. There's a massive shift which is happening on consuming online news, and most importantly, when it comes to the entertainment space, consumers are looking for original long form content, because now people are engaging with longer form content, whether it be a web series, whether it be original movies on digital first. And this surge we are seeing across genres, across geographies, and across age groups in India. I think if you look at the COVID period since mid-March, consumers on OTT have seen almost a 1.5 times increase. The average time spent has increased by almost double since the onset of COVID. There is more in-home time, which has led to content consumption across time bands, and these are some charts which I will share with you. Connected devices, and this is really interesting to see, has shown almost a 300% increase on people watching long form content on demand on their smart TVs. And that's a new segment which is very quickly emerging in our market, and a new opportunity for brands to engage with audiences on through digital on larger screens through the connected devices. And top content leading, which has gained the maximum viewership over the last 15 days, obviously news. followed by movies, and interestingly, food as a segment has seen a massive amount of growth. I think even if you look at most of the social feeds, a lot of people are today cooking, because they have time and they're kind of putting up posts about what they've prepared. And that also has, that also kind of falls in line with the trends we are seeing with consumption happening across food as a genre. Now, coming to streaming, now if you look at growth versus last month, there's almost a 20% increase just in a period of 4 weeks where it comes to viewership across OTT platforms in the country. I think the overall average growth on MAUs is almost 22%, with almost daily active users going up by 15%, and this is across the entire OTT streaming services in the country. This is again really interesting. In a matter of 4 weeks, there's an 87% rise in time spent across the OTT platform. So pre-lockdown, if you look at it, an average Indian was spending about 150 minutes a day watching content on OTT platforms. That's risen to a massive 280 minutes post-lockdown, and that's a real opportunity for brands to actually consume and engage with audiences where their time spent is the most. Now, what we see also is how we see the ADEX shift happening during this particular time. If you look at the overall media forecast growth rates, I think it's no surprise that digital obviously is the fastest growing segment in the country. Uh, it was pegged at 20%, but post-COVID, the forecast rate is now up to about 27%, and this is the Dentsu report, which I'm quoting. If you look at most of the reports, whether it's been done by Group M or you look at the BCG, KPMG, ENY reports, all of the industry reports are actually showing a trend where the digital growth has been pushed up post the COVID period on the ADEX shift, which we're expecting to happen across India. What is driving within digital is the growth being driven primarily by video in India, and we are seeing almost a 60% growth on online video advertising, and this is going to become the mainstay to drive the digital ADEX growth also in this country. So while social and display and search have a fair amount of volume, the growth's actually being driven across the country through video as a medium. And most of the clients I know of are actually now planning to do a single video-based plan across screens, whether it might be television, connected devices, mobile, and their plans of building reach and frequency plans is now gonna be like screen agnostic, but primarily driven through video. Looking at which are the sectors which have actually adopted this growth and where we see the massive amount of chunk coming in. So no surprises, CPG is the one which is obviously showing the massive amount of growth. And even if you look at the COVID period, essentials are something which obviously has the highest consumption. And we also know for a fact that especially in urban towns, there's a fair amount of hoarding which has started to happen in terms of people stocking up, ingredients or products in their houses. CPG is seeing a massive amount of growth, followed by e-commerce, and again, no surprise with delivery services, coming on post the COVID period. We see more spikes happening between FMCG and e-commerce as a thing. The other segment which we are seeing a fair amount of traction to start building up is the BFSI segment. I think during this period, what we're seeing is the traditional banking instruments like fixed deposits and recurring deposits starting to build share. These were instruments which had, kind of taken a backseat with all the mutual funds and stock investments coming in, but that's a new trend which we are seeing emerge with the post-COVID period. And share of the CPG, FMCG media spends continue to grow, and if you look at it, 36% of online video spends across the country is actually contributed by FMCG media spends. And that's how we see most of the traction and most of the movement now happening on the digital medium. Now, talking about ZEE5, just at a very high level, a snapshot, we reach out to about 76.4 million monthly users. We're seeing, peak daily active users of about 11.4 million. We have about 500 million video views every month, and this only is growing. What we're seeing is almost very high 3x, 2x growth in our user bases on the time spent in terms of the number of people who are coming on the platform to consume content. And some very interesting, analysis to see that if you look at afternoon and early morning time bands on OTTs and especially on Z5 have started to actually grow post the COVID period, because today people have time, and the time spent is happening in consuming on demand content. What we're also seeing is that the early morning band, there's almost a 78% surge in news viewership. Not surprising, because today news, as a genre, we are seeing a massive amount of growth happening across the digital medium. What we're also seeing in terms of what people are consuming, that there's almost a 92% surge in movie viewership. Fortunately for us, we have a massive movie library. And what we're seeing is that today people are exploring more and more genres within the movie segments, and we're seeing a fair amount of traction happening there. News, like I said, 78% growth on the news viewership alone. Music, food content, which is again very niche content. Actually, we're seeing a 37% increase on food content as a viewership, which I spoke about earlier. And interestingly, now Indians are paying for more and more in terms of bringing subscriptions. We're seeing almost an 80% rise in our subscriptions over the COVID period. And even if you look at the latest reports by Netflix has reported fair amount of growth for them in India. Amazon Prime's talking about fair amount of growth in India for them during this particular COVID period, and more Indians subscribing to their platforms. Now, within, if you look at the news viewership, what are the clusters which have actually worked? So if you look at it, the Hindi news segment actually has seen about 120% growth. An average views per viewers increased by 13% on the Hindi news. But what is interesting to see is a 200% growth in people consuming news in the regional content. And like I was mentioning, the way India is growing, 45% of our traffic comes from tier 2, tier 3 towns, and where we see that 66% of the audiences, prefer consuming content in their languages. That's exactly what we are seeing also on the news side. So while news as a genre is growing, within news, the maximum growth is happening from regional news, followed by Hindi, and then obviously the English news. But average views per views increased by almost 23% on the regional news side, and a 13% increase on the Hindi viewership. So massive growth for all channels being consumed on digital platforms, and that's where we're seeing the user shift happen. Secondly, if you look at linear to smart TV, I think pre-COVID the adoption was at a rate of 28%, which was fairly healthy. But post-COVID, what we are seeing is a massive adoption on connected TV viewerships. It's almost growing at double the rate what it was growing. I mean, from 28%, we've seen the growth up to about 72% on new users coming onto connected TV. I think these are some, first industry shifts which we are seeing massively happen, especially on the connected TV side with the COVID change in consumer behavior. Uh, as a platform, we have a very healthy gender split in terms of almost 50% of our audiences. We reach out to males and females. Probably one of the few platforms in this country which has a very high female viewership skew. It's also thanks to the GC content which we have on our platform. There are some shows where we almost have 60% of our audience who are women who watch those particular shows. Like I was mentioning, 45% of our viewership comes from tier 2 and tier 3 towns, and we are seeing this number grow faster than the tier 1 cities because of the penetration of the telecom internet services across the country now actually spreading throughout. Now, this is more than half of our users consume regional content. 53% of our regional content actually, the consumption on our platform, 53% of it is primarily on regional content. People, we are the only platform in this country which has content across 14 languages. Whether it's the 4 southern languages, Marathi, Bengali, Bhojpuri, Punjabi, Hindi, English, and we're seeing a massive amount of rise when it comes to people consuming content across regional languages. This is just to give you a flavor that this is not centered to a particular region in India. It's actually an all India phenomena. And the growth which I'm talking about from smaller towns, I mean, this is just to give you a kind of a sense, like smaller tier B towns, like Faridabad, or, Patna, or Siliguri, or Bhubaneswar. Everyone's almost on a double digit, 200%, 130, 150% kind of growth. And that's where we're seeing the smaller towns emerge during the COVID period on consuming content on digital platforms. So that's, I think, a second significant shift on consumer behavior in our country, of people adopting to consume content on digital devices earlier, these were the audiences who were very heavily skewed on traditional mediums. We also were awarded, and we were fortunate. We got awarded as the best rural marketing by Economic Times, this year, for campaigns which we ran across our tier 2, tier 3 towns. And it also kind of strengthens our position about rural India really liking and loving our content, which we have to offer to that particular segment. What we also won were a few awards across the smart TV, connected TV, as being the best patch wall across, whether you look at the Xiaomi TV, whether it's OnePlus, of being the most preferred OTT platform by most of the smart TV uh, manufacturers. I think what we've done specifically, just to give you why we see this movement happen, we've strategically worked on focusing on building our distribution in this country. So today we have a tie-up with all the three telcos. We work with all OEMs and ISP, especially on the smart TV and connected TV side. We have a partnership with all the major manufacturers. We are actually the only OTT platform to do a backward build for Samsung and LG. What I mean by that is the televisions which were launched in 2015, slightly older models, we as a platform did an effort to do a backward build to ensure the distribution and compliance of our platform on those television sets. We also work with across the internet ecosystem like Ecom Travel and other partners. And definitely on the BFSI side, all the e-wallets, all the major e-wallets are already integrated in our platform. This all helps us drive better usage and obviously reach out to newer audiences across the country. Uh, Talking about, today, the way we're seeing the shift on incremental reach, like this is a question most of the brand managers and CMOs ask me, that how do you calculate an incremental reach on OTT as a segment, as a platform, considering like on the television side you have a very robust BARC system which is a unified panel across the industry, whereas digital doesn't have a unified panel. So we've actually come up with something which is really interesting. What we did was we looked at all our top GC shows across languages. And just to give you an example, like for example, Kundli Bhagya, Kumkum Bhagya have 22 original episodes every month. Now, if somebody is coming and watching 10 to 14 of those shows on our platform first, our audiences who are already, what we call cord cutters, and are people who are consuming this content first on OTT and not on linear anymore. So if you start to look at the audiences across genres, across languages, you would actually see the incremental reach which OTTs as a segment can add to most of the audiences. So just to give you a snapshot, this is a percentile of audiences who actually watch more than 10 plus shows on the platform every month. In our hypothesis, these are audiences who are not consuming it on television anymore. And this is somewhere from a marketing point of view, from a marketer's point of view, a great way to add OTTs to their media mix to build incremental reach and obviously also reach out to newer audiences. Coming to the shift, what we're also seeing, post the NTO, which happened by TRAI, almost we see that 1 in 6, 16% have already unsubscribed to DTH connections or networks. 1 in 5 have moved completely to consuming online content. What we've also seen is men are more likely to unsubscribe compared to women, 19% versus 13%. And for the Generation Z, 26% have already migrated online. So there is a massive amount of transition we've already started to see across the country happening. With the COVID period, this trend has only accelerated. And today, marketers need to relook at how they plan their media mix. And, we are more than happy to work with all councils to see how effectively we can help them reach audiences in the country. This is just to show a kind of a brief snapshot on. So the gray line is what usually a television consuming pattern looks like during a day. The orange line is across OTT. So this is not just Z5. But if you look at it, like especially late mornings, afternoon, evenings, there is a fair amount of consumption which happens on OTT throughout the day, which is almost double to that of what television consumption was in the country. And if you look at the orange line today, that's, in terms of consumption patterns, are actually even higher than what the trends were, what we saw in television over the years in terms of time spent, in terms of consumption during various time bands. Uh, what we've done is also to help advertisers. What we've started to do is we've started to enrich a lot of first party data, especially looking at how the new shift which is happening also on the data privacy side. So we work across with a lot of partners with third party DMPs. So we've started to build on apographic data which can help customers start doing better profiling of audiences which they want to reach out to. We have the capabilities to do geo based locations. We also do a fair amount of social and fine location targeting through various channels, and all this data we've kind of built into our own data lakes to help build better personas. We probably are also the only OTT platforms which have now created capabilities on a CDP side. So while most of the people work on DMPs, which are data management platform, a CDP is a customer data platform. So what a CDP does is, the difference between a DMP and CDP is that a CDP has the ability to look at various multiple big data sources and create a single customer view for a brand. That way, a brand can create a persona of an audience they want to reach out to, target that audience, and also do lookalike audiences to have better enhanced reach for their messaging and campaigns. Secondly, what we're also trying to now is build consumer cohorts. So while gender is at a very basic level, which most of the advertisers or most of the brands want to reach out to, I think the from a digital point of view, what value an OTT platform or Z5 can bring is also looking at different life stages, interest level targeting, looking at educational work experience, getting into niche segments like fashion and beauty, and then travel, vacation, finance, and so on. So there are many capabilities which today platforms like ours are building for helping brands to reach out to the next level. Uh, the other thing which is really important to know, because when it comes to reaching out, trust and capability, transparency is super important for most of the brands. So what we've done is we've created upper and lower funnel marketing capabilities from in terms of data. Z5 is in 100% brand safe environment because we don't have currently any UGC content. It's a content wall garden where there is premium environment for brands to kind of relay their message. There is repeat consumption. Most important is 80% of the ads are viewable because a skip button only comes at a 30-second, unlike the social platforms where you have a skip button at 5 seconds. So the overall VTRs on the platform are significantly higher, and obviously the targeting capabilities which can help reach out to very precise audiences and segments which brands look for. What are the competitive edge which an OTT can bring versus other mediums in this country is, one is brand safety. I think the content is still so, while people talk about content being king, I think from our point of view there are three main pillars of our business, which is content, technology, and data. And our endeavor is to bring all these three pillars together to bring the right value and the best possible value for advertisers and for brands. uh, Extremely high VTRs, which I spoke about. You can build fair amount of frequency because of loyal repeat audiences who come on a significant way. There is third-party tracking, there is programmatic certification, and there is intelligent recommendation, which we've kind of used some Israeli companies, tools like Talamus, to help build better relevance for messaging to audiences across the country. Now, if you look at just a high-level snapshot, what an OTT platform like ours can deliver versus online video platforms or social platforms is extremely almost 3x the efficiencies on VTRs and almost double the efficiencies on CTRs for every brand to associate with. Secondly, in terms of certification, so we very, our philosophy with partnering with brands is to create 100% measurability and transparency, and that's the way we are building our ad stack and the way we've built our capabilities. So today we are certified across all third-party trackers. We also partner with all the largest SSPs in the country. We're also underway to get a certification on Double Verify. So, most of the brands, the kind of transparency you're looking for in terms of third-party tracking and measurement is already there by us to offer. Secondly, what we are doing on the content side, especially during the COVID period, I think it's important to realize that there is no new production of television serials or movies which is happening. Yet, despite that case, we've been able to add 1,000 hours of content which we've added on our platform during this COVID period. We've gotten new original shows. We have gotten original episodes of popular TV shows. We have added more movies onto our library. We've added regional shows. We've also added ancillary content, and we've also now diversified into Korean, and very soon some Pakistani content will also be available on the platform. And this is something important because at this point of time, audiences are looking for new shows and new avenues to engage with. And this is something which we've been very successfully able to do and to keep ourselves relevant in this time. What we've also very successfully able to do is almost now we have 43 live news channels on the platform. We've added, Hindi, the India Today bouquet across, Hindi, English, regional content. We have two dedicated COVID-19 channels which are covering information and report across public safety and all the updates which are happening coming from the government, which is also building further engagement. And like if you remember, I had showed the 78% growth across the news consumption. It's also the factor of the content which is there for people to consume and come and watch credible partners talk, report on this particular segment. What we've also done is we've launched a new section on kids, and this is something very interesting. Most of the parents I speak to, I being one, kids are now all the time home. So, how to productively constantly keep them engaged. We've made sure that we have relevant content across different age groups, whether you're looking at toddlers or tweens or teens. We have now catered a certain amount of content which is there and created a dedicated section across on the platform only specific to kids. Food content we have surfaced a lot because we have a very rich food library, because of our strength across the broadcast side. So there is a fair amount of food content which is already there up on the platform, and it's in line with what people today are engaging with in the country, and that kind of gives them an opportunity to come and look at their favorite chefs cooking their favorite recipes for them to experiment at home. This is something new we've started. It's called Live to Home, Supermoon. We have started to do live shows across with various influencers, around fitness, entertainment, food, and so on, various genres. And this is something we've seen that is bringing high engagement to the platform. So the first part happened between 3rd April to 7th April, and we saw a massive amount of viewership happening across content which we did with these influencers during this COVID period. 17th to 19th April was the second phase. Again, we saw a massive amount of engagement, and then again it was around three genres. One was around fitness, food, and entertainment. Again, the three specific genres where we're seeing maximum amount of traction happening around this COVID period. Last but not the least, I just want to kind of quickly touch upon the capabilities which we've been able to build from a platform point of view. So today we have about 5 ad products, what we call our ad suite, which is powered by various tools and technologies across the country. So quickly talking about what it is. So Infonomics is our data lake, which we have the capabilities to do various audience segments based on interest, affinity, all the basic levels of targeting capabilities which we could offer to brands. Second piece is what we call AdVault, which is our products, whether you want to buy pre-rolls, mid-rolls, the various display ad units, building engagement, BTRs. If you want to drive traffic to your websites, to your businesses, there are opportunities for you to engage with audiences. And this is not only just on mobile, this is across iOS, connected TV, and it could also be KPI based. Secondly, I think the other product which we've launched is so these are just some examples of the different various ad units on the platform, whether it's an interstitial, a video masthead, roadblocks, and pre-roll, mid-rolls, which happens with companion banners and native ad units. Second piece, and this is a very interesting piece which is there, especially during the COVID period, we've seen a massive amount of traction with influencer marketing and influencer content. Uh, this is a product where we have the capability to create bespoke content for brands with influencers, which is across our own network. We could help you create custom content, which could we could host this content for brands. We could do in-show integrations. We could cover live events, look at sponsorship opportunities, and also create social elements across our social handles to enhance and amplify this entire engagement. Play 5 is a very interesting concept. This is the gamification section on the platform. Here we have an opportunity to create custom casual games, hyper casual games for brands. This could be around our content, and this gives an opportunity for brands to integrate and build engagement for themselves. The last product which we have is something called Wishbox. We've enabled e-commerce through video. Here there is an opportunity for brands to integrate with what the protagonist is wearing on the screen, whether it's her outfit or the accessory or any other such capabilities, where we've created a channel where a person can go buy the similar product from any of the e-com sites. And this is again, so it covers from the top end of the funnel from marketing, which is awareness, down to engagement level from an action point of view. So it covers the full marketing funnel for any brand. So that's what mainly I had to talk about. I hope you found this useful. I am happy to take any questions, should there be any. So Prasad, over to you.
Taran, thank you very much, Taranjeet. It was a very interesting presentation, and as all of us know, new situations demand new solutions, and you've obviously offered a lot for people to kind of take back home to their brands and think about. One of the things that I wanted to ask you was that, when you say the surge of consumption, has it been, primarily from smaller metros kind of just stealing the thunder and just like skewing it towards them? Is the power shifting on the consumption pattern? That's the first thing
I,
that is
I would
going on in my
I would say the power is adding rather than shifting.
mind. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
the urban towns the urban towns are already there on the platforms, right? And this so urban towns are growing equally. So just to give you an example, urban towns might be growing at about 20-22%, whereas the tier 2, tier 3 towns are growing at 60-65%. So just to give you a shift, like the growth is happening across the market, it's just that the power is now getting distributed. It's not really just the tier 2, tier 3 towns growing, but yeah, we see the massive growth because the bases were small, but the growth rates are much higher compared to that of the urban towns.
Uh, and you also spoke about the kind of brand solutions that are on offer, and how customized content is kind of possible. Do you see that as the way ahead, at least in the short to mid term, where there's going to be a surge in demand for more customized content rather than plain vanilla advertising?
I think it's gonna be a mix of both. I think from a depends on the category. Like there are some categories, especially on the essential services side, essential products, which the government has kind of classified. These products would have to build on reach and frequency. So I would say that they would continue to invest on building that particular form of advertising. There would be brands who would want to build far engagement, and that's where the influencer marketing piece comes in to create that impact or create that spike in their communication during a period of time. I think it depends on the industry, it depends on the purpose. But yes, I see a massive, at least rise on briefs from brands around creating custom content around this period. You're right. I mean, there is a massive spike we are seeing on demand creating custom content. Hello, Prasad, you there?
Hello.
Yeah, sorry, Prasad, could you hear me?
Yeah, the other thing that I wanted to kind of check with you was on this part where you know moving forward, given your vast experience, what are some of the five do's that you would kind of uh, tell people to do, and some of the five don'ts when they are planning their advertising strategy?
I think do's the first important thing. I don't think, Prasad, it's like five or something. I would probably talk about a
Yeah, yeah,
few.
yeah. I
Yeah,
just put a number to it. It could be
sure. So I think the first thing is I think it's important to, especially the way I see the industry shift happening. I think post COVID, we all know that there is going to be economic pressure, which is definitely going to set in. Now, keeping that in mind, I think brands are going to get more and more conscious about how they spend their money because there are going to be ROI metrics which are going to start coming in terms of deliverables for most of the platform partners. I think that's a very interesting opportunity for most of the platforms, and also for us at Z5 is if we can help brands create an element of engagement apart from the awareness factor, which can kind of translate into measurable ROI and KPIs for a brand. I think that is something for brands to look at. Secondly, I think what is really important to see is while brands were taking it slow and looking at how movement was happening, I think COVID is as a unfortunately or looking at the current environment has resulted in a massive and a very quick consumer shift towards digital as a medium. Now within digital, if you look at it, today it doesn't matter whether you're watching a long form video on your phone or your connected TV, there is massive amount of consumption which is happening and audiences have already moved there. So if audiences are moved there, it's important for them, brands to start thinking about building their share of voice. One, secondly, also building engagement apart from the awareness which they want to drive. These are the two, three things I would recommend for brands to start thinking about.
You also spoke about the incremental reach that platforms like yours are providing. Would you
Yeah,
want to elaborate a little more on that?
yeah, I
And
mean, definitely. I mean, see, every medium in this country has their own strength and position. This is a good time for brands to actually shift a bit of their ad budgets onto also digital to look at building incrementality to their existing plans. Earlier, I mean, there are some brands who are still apprehensive of moving budgets to digital because they feel that television is serving their purpose. But if video consumption is equally big and probably becoming bigger, it gives them the opportunity on digital to create the third layer of engagement. It also helps them create real-time data about audiences because every single impression which gets served on digital is measurable, correct? And at the end of the day, that's creating a huge amount of transparency, a huge amount of insights about their own consumers, which can be then looked at in creating a cohort, a segment for themselves, and use it from a remarketing point of view, or use it from doing a lookalike and doing audience matches to do enhanced reach. The capabilities and possibilities are many.
you also spoke about the introduction of new genres of content that have happened in this COVID era. Would you
Yeah.
want to comment on, what's been the response like? What percentage of your new viewers are actually taking up this new genre of content? And
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we're seeing a massive amount of rise on like, even niche content like food, which earlier used to be small. Now there is a substantial amount of engagement and traffic which is coming on sections like food. There is a massive amount of spike we're seeing across kids content. Obviously, like I spoke, news is obviously driving a lot of growth. I think GECs have stagnated a bit because there's no new content coming in, because there's no new TV episodes which are getting shot, unfortunately.
right,
But what has happened is in the result, now the movie consumption has gone up because there are a lot
right.
of people now, watching a lot of movies which they wouldn't have seen earlier or would want to see. And so there is, so while entertainment consumption remains to be big, but things like movies, obviously news for obvious reasons, and kids, food, these are content which are emerging a lot now,
And
and
you
that's
also spoke about international content like Korean movies and Pakistani content, which is soon going to be on air, right? So,
yes.
so
So that
obviously the Korean, yeah, sorry,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, so that's like, for us creating a second layer of diversity on content around entertainment, around the GEC space, around the fiction, non-fiction shows. And what we've seen is that there is a fair amount of consumption which is happening for dubbed Korean content in India, because people do like that kind of content. So if you remember, Korean pop, K-pop had suddenly also become really big in India 2 years
Yeah.
ago. And that phenomena was there in Korea.
Well, that's it, yeah, Tarun. From my end, I think we've had a lot of questions, and in case I missed out on something that that you wanted to address in more detail, please go ahead, or else
No, I'm
we'll
good. Thank you
thank.
so much for having this, and I've really enjoyed
No,
sharing my.
it was thoroughly enjoyable even from my end. A lot of new learnings. Thank you very much, and audience, thank you very much for having been you know so attentive and uh, spending your valuable Saturday afternoon hours with us. And thank you, Taranjeet, once again for being such a wonderful speaker. Bye.
Thank you, Prasad, and thank you everyone. Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Bye.